Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I don't see how it's possible to separate out practicing Krishna consciousness from also practicing a positive attitude toward everyone and everything. In other words, I don't see how it's possible to hold fault finding and Krishna consciousness at the same time. I don't see how it's possible. Actual Krishna consciousness, actually conscious of Krishna, which means, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, devotional service. How is it possible to love Krishna and find fault with anything or anyone? How is it possible? I don't understand. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. One is light, enlightenment, ecstatic, realization of the presence of God in everything and everyone. And the other is this like really negative, this is no good, that's no good. No matter how much it is, it's not enough. It's no good. Whatever it is, whatever anybody does, it's not enough, it's no good. How is it possible to enter into an atmosphere of love of Godhead, holding on to that mindset? So, for me, practicing Krishna consciousness means practicing, appreciating everyone and everything wherever they're at, and seeing in relationship to Krishna. For me, that's practicing Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And it's a bit of a challenge. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Some devotees have a mind like a steel trap, and they're fixed in this idea of fault finding. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Ultimately, the fault finding is actually finding fault with the spiritual master and Krishna, ultimately. So I don't want to go there. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, It's very tricky stuff. It's very tricky. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna. Wow. Wow. So all I gotta say is Krishna. Woo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna. It's actually a blessing not to have any special abilities or talents, to be a little socially retarded. It's really a great blessing. It's a great blessing. Yeah, like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Looking at a picture of Prabhupada, and he's smiling, boy. He's smiling. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Oh man, he's smiling away. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yes. Looks like a Bhagavatam, or maybe a Krishna book, open up in front of him on a little book stand. He has his hands in a bead bag, his hand in a bead bag, and he's wearing saffron and a beautiful flower garland. His nice tilak on. He is smiling. There's a little vase with some flowers next to him. Yeah, it looks like Krishna book. It's like Krishna book. He is smiling. Hare Krishna. No teeth. He's not showing his teeth. He's just he's feeling so good. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Yeah, this fault finding is just practicing Krishna consciousness means practicing avoiding fault finding. It should be like the 5th regulative principle or something, you know. No meat, fish, or eggs, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no fault finding. And chant Hare Krishna. Like the 4 regs, no meat, fish, or eggs, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex, brings one to the level of civilized human being, not come out of the barbarian group, become civilized human being with a chance of culture, actual culture, spiritual culture. And the 5th regulative principle, no fault finding, is civilized spiritual society, civilized spiritual life, no fault finding. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It's like a mad elephant in a garden. It's fault finding, just tramples everything. Hare Krishna. It's said that a pure devotee is able to find the one little drop of nectar in a whole lake of water. If there's one little drop of milk there, the swan can get the little drop of nectar. So it's an ocean of faults. It's an ocean of faults. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's as good as a conch shell, really. Every hour, I'm reminded that Krishna is time. Time I am. And if I'm wasting time by not seeking the shelter of the Lord at every moment, then cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Passion and ignorance, they can sweep away even a devotee who's practicing Krishna consciousness. They get swept away by passion and ignorance. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Ignorance is madness. Ignorance is madness, illusion, not being able to see things as they are, mistaking one thing for another thing. Madness and illusion, the mode of ignorance. Intoxication. Not necessarily even substances for intoxication, but intoxicated by false sense of importance or pride in something. They also act as intoxicants on the subtle level, contaminants, intoxicants. And the mode of passion, attachment to results, identifying oneself as the doer and wanting the results for my activities, trying to get results. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Yeah, practicing Krishna consciousness in the present age, boy, wow, it's Kali Yuga. That's why it's made simple. Just take shelter of the sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And wherever the crazy mind tries to take the soul, you can bring it back to Krishna just by chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hello, Mr. Sushil Mehta. Hare Krishna. Thanks for stopping by. Do you want to come on the camera for a minute or two? You have time? I'll invite you. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna. Okay, let's hear something. I wanted to take a look at the Nectar of Devotion and the section there about the shadow of the holy name and the reflection of the holy name. Because unless the holy name is actually received through spiritual initiation, then it's the holy name and there's always benefit there, but the actual connection isn't made, and it's the shadow of the name. So let's see what you can hear from Prabhupada about shadow of the holy name and the reflection of the holy name. It's in Nectar of Devotion, and the search function I'm looking on the internet is not very good. They got a new website to manage their online publications, and search function isn't very good. Oh, maybe this is it right away. Okay. Let's see. Chapter 18 of Nectar. I don't see the... Okay, you can read this little section here. It's from chapter 18 of Nectar of Devotion. And this is Prabhupada's summary study, or big long purport, on Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Jai Shri Prabhupada. In the book Padyavali by Sri Rupa Goswami, there is the following statement about Vrindavan. Quote, "In this place, the son of Maharaj Nanda used to live with his father, who was king of all cowherd men. In this place, Lord Krishna broke the cart in which the Sakatashura demon was concealed. At this place, Damodar, who can cut the knot of our material existence, was tied up by his mother Yasoda." End quote. A pure devotee of Lord Krishna resides in the district of Mathura or Vrindavan and visits all the places where Krishna's pastimes were performed. At these sacred places, Krishna displayed his childhood activities with the cowherd boys, Mother Yasoda. The system of circumambulating all these places is still current among devotees of Lord Krishna, and those coming to Mathura and Vrindavan always feel transcendental pleasure. Actually, if someone goes to Vrindavan, he will immediately feel separation from Krishna, who performed such nice activities when he was present there. I had the good fortune to go to Vrindavan and Mathura and also Navadvip. I got to go twice, 1977, the year Prabhupada left, and the year before he left, 1978, the year after. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Yeah, if anyone can go to visit these holy places, go, for sure. It's not anything like this Western world, not anything like it. It's completely different. It's like another planet, on this planet. Such attraction for remembering Krishna's activities is known as attachment for Krishna. There are impersonalist philosophers and mystics, however, who, by a show of devotional service, want ultimately to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord. They sometimes try to imitate a pure devotee's sentiment for visiting the holy places where Krishna had his pastimes, but they simply have a view for salvation, and so their activities cannot be considered attachment. It is said by Rupa Goswami that the attachment exhibited by pure devotees for Krishna, which also means attachment for remembering Krishna's pastimes and activities, cannot possibly be perfected in the heart of fruitive workers, karmis, or mental speculators, because such attachment in pure Krishna consciousness is very rare and not possible to achieve even for many liberated souls. So, attachment for Krishna's pastimes is very rare, and even liberated souls. It's like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, out of thousands, out of millions, is it thousands or millions? Oh goodness. Well, anyway, out of an incredibly large number of people, out of millions of those who strive for perfection. What is that verse? Come on, quit guessing. Get the verse. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Now is the time to study these things. Bhagavad Gita. Oh no, there's 3,000 references for perfection. Highest perfection of life. Now it's a verse. Not merely abstaining from work can one achieve perfection. Those who are free from anger and are self-realized, endeavoring for perfection. Okay, come on, where's that? There it is. Okay. And it is 8, Transcendental Knowledge, verse 11. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So those who have achieved liberation, even salvation, it's very rare that anyone even strives for that. But even out of those who strive for that salvation or perfection or liberation from material identification, spiritual, I'm spiritual. And those who have achieved that perfection, hardly one knows me in truth, which means hardly one has attraction for remembering Krishna's activities, his pastimes and activities. Hardly one of those has attraction for that. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. It's very rare and is not possible to be achieved even by many liberated souls. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, liberation from material contamination is the stage at which devotional service can be achieved. That's not the stage at which it is achieved. It is a stage from there it can be achieved, because Krishna consciousness, pure Krishna consciousness, can't be achieved from the stage of fruitive work, mode of passion. And it actually can't be achieved by mental speculators also. But it is those can be jumping off points. In other words, for the karma yogi, if his fruitive activities are then aligned in terms of serving Krishna, giving the fruits of his activities for serving Krishna, they become purified, and then can become liberated from identification with the material activities as something to be enjoyed by him or her, and then they get that freedom. From there, they become eligible to become attached to Krishna's form, his pastimes, his activities, his personality. And the mental speculator, the one seeking knowledge and liberation, that also, by taking guidance of a devotee spiritual master, that tendency to do that intellectually can be dovetailed and purified into devotional activity. That the goal of all of that intellectual seeking is to reach a point of appreciation, attachment, and loving sentiment toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, liberation from material contamination is the stage at which devotional service can be achieved. So those material contaminations, fruitive work and karma, or the tendency to just try to do everything on an intellectual platform, when they become free from those contaminations, which doesn't necessarily mean stopping doing those things, it means learning how to, all that we offer, all that we do, all that we give away, everything as an offering to Krishna, and become free from attachment to those things, even though we may be engaged in that way. For a person who simply wants to have liberation and to merge into the impersonal Brahmajyoti, it's not possible to acquire attachment to Krishna, because that's not what they want. This attachment is very confidentially kept by Krishna and is only bestowed upon pure devotees. Even ordinary devotees cannot have such pure attachment for Krishna. Ordinary devotees. That must be a reference to the three types of devotees. The Kanistha Adhikari would probably be considered an ordinary devotee. Kanistha, just beginning out, trying to practice, not a pure devotee. He's trying to practice. So you say, it's an ordinary devotee. Hare Krishna. Even ordinary devotees cannot have such pure attachment for Krishna. What is that pure attachment for Krishna? His pastimes, his form, his personality, his paraphernalia, his entourage. They can't have that attachment, even though they're engaged in devotional service. Therefore, how is it possible for success to be achieved by persons whose hearts are contaminated by actions and reactions of fruitive activities, and who are entangled by various types of mental speculation? And as long as they remain in that state, how are they going to get out? They're not going to get out. There are many so-called devotees who artificially think of Krishna's pastime, which are known as Astakaliya Lila, Kaliya Lila. Sometimes one may artificially imitate these, pretending that Krishna is talking with him in the form of a boy, or else one may pretend that Radharani and Krishna have both come to him and are talking with him. Such characteristics are sometimes exhibited by the impersonalist class of men, and they may captivate some innocent persons who have no knowledge in the science of devotional service. However, as soon as an experienced devotee sees all these caricatures, he can immediately evaluate such rascaldom. If such a pretender is sometimes seen possessing imitative attachment to Krishna, that will not be accepted as real attachment. It may be said, however, that such attachment is like giving a future hope to the pretender, so that he may eventually rise onto the actual platform of pure devotional service. Wow! Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Krishna! Wow, what aren't we seeing? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Woo, Krishna! This imitative attachment can be divided into two headings, namely shadow attachment and para, transcendental attachment. If someone, without undergoing the regulative principles of devotional service, or without being guided by a bona fide spiritual master, so shows such imitative attachment, it's called shadow attachment. Sometimes it is found that a person actually attached to material enjoyment or salvation has the good fortune to associate with pure devotees while they are engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord. By the good grace of the Lord, one may also cooperate and join in the chanting. At that time, simply by the association of such pure devotees, the moon-like rays from their hearts reflect on him. And by the influence of the pure devotees, he may show some likeness of attachment caused by inquisitiveness. But this is very flickering. And if by the manifestation of such shadow attachment, one feels the disappearance of all material pangs, then it is called para attachment. Such shadow attachment or para attachment can develop by associating with a pure devotee or by visiting holy places like Vrindavan or Mathura. Or if an ordinary man develops such attachment for Krishna and fortunately performs devotional activities in the association of pure devotees, he can also rise to the platform of pure devotional service. The conclusion is that transcendental attachment is so powerful that if such attachment is seen manifested in some common man by the association of a pure devotee, it can bring one to the perfectional stage. But such attachment for Krishna cannot be invoked in a person without his being sufficiently blessed by the association of pure devotees. As attachment can be invoked by the association of pure devotees, so attachment can also be extinguished by committing offenses at the lotus feet of pure devotees. To be more clear, by the association of pure devotees, attachment for Krishna can be aroused. But if one commits offenses at the lotus feet of a devotee, his shadow attachment or para attachment can be extinguished. This extinguishing is like the waning moon, which gradually decreases and at last becomes darkness. One should therefore be very careful while associating with pure devotees to guard against committing an offense at their lotus feet. Transcendental attachment, either shadow or para, can be nullified by different grades of offenses at the lotus feet of pure devotees. If the offense is very serious, then one's attachment becomes almost nil. And if the offense is not very serious, one's attachment can become second class or third class. If someone becomes attached to the principles of salvation or to merging into the existence of the Brahmajyoti, his ecstasies gradually diminish into shadow and para attachment, or else transform into the principles of ahangrahopasana. Ahangrahopasana. This ahangrahopasana describes a living entity when he begins spiritual realization by identifying himself with the Supreme Lord. This state of self-realization is technically known as monism. The monist thinks himself one with the Supreme Lord. Thus, without differentiating between himself and the Supreme Lord, it is his view that by worshipping himself, he is worshipping the Supreme Whole. Krishna. Sometimes it is found that a neophyte is taking part in chanting and dancing very enthusiastically, but within himself he's under the impression he has become one with the Supreme Whole. This conception of monism is completely different from pure transcendental devotional service. If, however, it is seen that a person has developed a high standard of devotion without having undergone even the regulative principles, it is to be understood that his status of devotional service was achieved in a former life. For some reason or another, it had been temporarily stopped, most probably by committing an offense at the lotus feet of a devotee. Now, with a good second chance, he has again begun to develop. The conclusion is that steady progress in devotional service can be attained only in the association of pure devotees. Woo! If one can gradually advance his status in devotional service, it is to be understood that it is due to the causeless mercy of Krishna himself. If a person is completely detached from material enjoyment and has developed pure ecstatic devotion, even if he is sometimes accidentally found not to be living up to the standard of devotional service, one should not be envious of him. It is confirmed also in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who has unflinching faith in and devotion to the Lord, even if he is sometimes found to be accidentally deviated from pure devotional characteristics, should still be counted amongst the pure. That's also in Bhagavad Gita. Api chet suracharo vajate mam ananyabha. That if one is engaged in devotional service and there is some fall down or deviation, it should be understood that they will very quickly be corrected, and it should still be considered a devotee, and it's very quickly rectified. Unflinching faith and devotional service in Lord Krishna and in the spiritual master makes one highly elevated in the activities of devotional service. So in devotional service, unflinching faith in devotional service, in Lord Krishna and in the spiritual master makes one highly elevated. Unflinching faith. Let's see if I can find that verse in Gita. Apichet Suracharo Ajate Mam Ananyaba. Let's see if we can't find it. Okay, 3,000 references to Api. Krishna. It's a very common word. Oh my goodness. Are we going to get it? Oh. I think we found it. Yeah. Here it is. And it is chapter 9, text 30. And that is the most confidential knowledge. Text 30, chapter 9. Api chet siddharacharo ajate mamananyavat sadhareva samantavya samyagya vasito hisa. Api chet siddharacharo ajate mamananyavat sadhareva samantavya samyagya vasito hisa. So that little word, api, means in spite of. Translation, even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he's properly situated. Is that a license for whatever? Mayhem? Well, if we look at the context of this, for one thing, it's Krishna talking to Arjuna, and Arjuna is hesitating to fight because on the other side he has to fight with his teachers, his family members, his relatives, his grandfather. He has to fight and kill them. So that's abominable. So what Krishna says, it's my desire, this battle has to take place, and whether you do it or not, it's going to happen. Why don't you do it and take the credit so that you can glorify me, Krishna? And then we have this nice Bhagavad Gita. So in that context, if we hear Krishna tell Arjuna, even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he's engaged in devotional service, he's to be considered saintly because he's properly situated. So I'm not thinking it's in terms of, you've got some neophyte, Kanishta Adhikari, he's trying to engage in devotional service and he's going out and back in the temple smoking cigarettes, or worse, that is what's being referred to here. Let's see the purport. The word Sudaracharo used in this verse is very significant. You should understand it properly. And the word for word, Sudaracharo, committing the most abominable actions. Okay, so we should understand that. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional and the other is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with conditional life. Such activities are called conditional. So for protecting the body, going along with the rules of society, paying your taxes, driving your car on the proper side of the road, paying your rent or your mortgage. Okay, all these things, you abide by the rules of the society and the state, and there are many different activities that require that. That's conditional activities. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature is engaged in Krishna consciousness, or the devotional service of the Lord, has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome constitutional position. He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically. But such a person's fall down does not disqualify him. Like what would an abominable activity socially or politically, like socially, well, some crime, maybe steal some money, or has an illicit connection with a woman, or there are other illicit connections available. Commits an act which is socially or politically abominable. He takes some stand on, say, abortion or something, politically. So, Prabhupada is referring to here abominable actions which might not always, but could tie in with sinful activity. But such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it's stated that if a person falls down, but is wholeheartedly engaged in transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord being situated within his heart, beautifies him and excuses him from that abomination. The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi, fully engaged in the service of the Lord, sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness is so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore, the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path, for, as it is explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course, as soon as a devotee is completely situated in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, like an illicit connection, like someone steals another man's wife, or someone steals a woman's husband. These things go on. Or there's some other kind of illicit connection, or some other bad habit. But they're engaged in devotional service. They're chanting Hare Krishna, they're trying to perform practical service, maybe in the temple, maybe even going on the altar, waving the chamra, waving the incense, and then they have some nonsense that they're weak, and the opportunity comes, and they put their hands in the cookie jar. Maybe they steal some money, or maybe they ruin someone else's reputation unnecessarily. Maybe even lie about them to out of some other kind of weakness they have to do those kinds of things. But Prabhupada says, is accidental. He's not ideal. There are occasional fall downs, but they will be stopped in due course of time. In other words, one of the offenses to chanting the holy name is to sin on the strength of the holy name. So that is going to make things really slow. But if there's an accidental fall down, that's different. Those things will stop eventually. I remember hearing it described, it's like when a fan is plugged into the electric socket and the blades are going around. If you unplug it, the blades don't stop right away. They still go around until they wind down. This is not plugged in anymore. It's plugged in somewhere else, to Krishna. It's not plugged into the material desire for sense gratification. It's plugged into Krishna, and that other one eventually dies down. Therefore, a person who is situated in Krishna consciousness and is engaged with determination in the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, should be considered to be in the transcendental position. Even by chance or accident, he is found to have fallen. The word Sadar Eva, he is saintly, very emphatic. They are a warning to the non-devotees that because of an accidental fall down, a devotee should not be derided. He should still be considered saintly, even if he has fallen down accidentally. And the word mantavya is still more emphatic. So these are words in the verse. Mantavya, to be considered. And the word mantavya, which means to be considered, is still more emphatic. If one does not follow this rule and derides a devotee for his accidental fall down, then he is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively engaged in devotional service, which is kind of unflinchingly and exclusively. You have to ask the question, how can someone be exclusively engaged in devotional service and at the same time engaged in stealing money, having illicit connections? Yeah, they're fall downs. But how can that, you have to say, well, how can that be? How can that be? How can someone be exclusively engaged in devotional service and at the same time engaged in something else? You say, how is that? How is it? How can that be? See, the more I read Prabhupada's books, the more questions I have. I'm looking for answers, and all I get is more questions. Hare Krishna. Krishna. I'm going to write that one down. No, I can put it here. I'm going to open up Notepad. And here we go. Make a note here. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's Bhagavad Gita 9:3. Okay, Krishna. Say this. Bhagavad Gita 9:3. Okay. Well, maybe Prabhupada's gonna help us with this, because it's one more paragraph. The mark of a spot which may be seen on the moon does not become an impediment to the moonlight. Similarly, the accidental fall down of a devotee from the path of a saintly character does not make him abominable. On the other hand, one should not misunderstand that a devotee in transcendental devotional service can act in all kinds of abominable ways. This verse only refers to an accident due to the strong power of material connections. So I didn't understand the verse at all when I read it. It didn't sound like that to me at all. It sounded like Arjuna didn't want to commit abominable acts, and Krishna was telling him. Anyway, Krishna, I'm just looking at these things. I don't claim to have, the definitive answer. I was looking at it. Hare Krishna. So, devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he is still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it is understood that he is not a high devotee. Whoa, nothing negative here. Prabhupada, he took off with this verse in a whole nother direction. I'm looking at it like Krishna's talking to Arjuna. Arjuna doesn't want to commit an abominable action like killing his family members and everything in a war, fratricidal war for who's going to rule the kingdom. And Krishna's telling him, even if one commits the most abominable actions, like what I'm asking you to do, if he's engaged in devotional service, he's considered to be saintly because he's properly situated. The Prabhupada went off in a whole other direction. Prabhupada talked about if someone actually does fall down. And he explained the two different types of activities people have. They have activities in conditioned life, and they have activities in their transcendental position as a servant of Krishna. And the two, a lot of times, will agree, but sometimes they don't. And that's the situation Arjuna is in. The Prabhupada took it to the nth degree. He said, even if people, here, Krishna is asking Arjuna to commit abominable activities, and he's giving him all protection. Have no fear. You're protected from all sinful reactions because you're doing this for me under my direct instructions. But Prabhupada takes it way even more. That even if a person, not under the direction of Krishna, but actually has some accidental fall downs and does some abominable things, actually kills somebody, or steals money, or has illicit connections, sexual connections, or whatever, eats hamburgers, he had some abominable activity. If he's trying to practice Krishna consciousness to one degree or another, to whatever degree, he's still considered saintly. That's how far Prabhupada took that, and that's how far he had to take that, considering his preaching mission amongst the Westerners, the barbarians. There was one devotee, this was in the early 70s, like 1971, in the old Boston Temple, which used to be a funeral home. Oh God. The Prasadam Hall was where they used to display the caskets. Oh, it was a wonderful temple. I loved it there. Hare Krishna. There was one devotee who used to come. His name was Mace. And He would come to the Sunday program and take prasadam and chant with everyone. But he was a drug dealer. And he had a lot of wives, common law wives. He was a tough dude, nice. But with the devotees, he was super, super respectful. And he loved to chant Hare Krishna and take prasadam. And I remember one time I got on the little bus. They had trolleys, electric trolleys and trucks, to join the Harinam party. They were in the park, Boston Common. And the trolley was filled with people. There were no seats. And he saw me, and he was sitting down. He got up and said, "Would you take my seat?" And he went down, stood in the back. And he was always like that with devotees. Hare Krishna. So he got into a gunfight, and he was killed. And when he would come to the temple, a lot of times he would come with this one woman, young woman, maybe his favorite, or the one that liked Krishna, or whatever. He would come with her. I think her name was Kathy. And they were they behaved very nicely when they came to the temple, very nicely. They looked like devotees. So he was in a gunfight and he was killed. So he asked that he let her be known to her before that if he was killed, that he wanted to be cremated and his ashes taken to the Ganges. So that's what she did. She came to the temple to tell us what had happened, and that she was going to India. Either she was going to India or she gave someone his ashes to take to India. But anyway, his ashes ended up in the Ganges. So sometimes our activities in life, they go along very nicely with Krishna conscious and constitutional, and sometimes there's a problem. And Prabhupada, for whom he had to preach to and who he had to reach out to, he took this to the nth degree, that even if there is an accidental fall down, and it's abominable, but the person's trying to practice Krishna consciousness, and they consider saved. But he makes it clear, it has to be accidental. It's not that, you go into a deal with Krishna, I'll do this and then I'll chant. I'll do this and then I'll chant. Not like that. Actually trying to approach Krishna, and there's some accident. So, no one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he's still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, it must be understood he's not a high devotee. So that's that nice verse, 930. Api chet siddhiracharo bhajate mam ananyabhat sadur eva samantavya samyak yavasito hisa. Wow. Krishna, I love looking at these verses. Absolutely. I just love looking at them. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And, trying to have some, unpack them, expand them out, look at them, fluff them up. Let them bloom, let them blossom, these verses, in the core of the heart. Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. So, okay, so there's one more paragraph in the Nectar of Devotion. That was Gita. This is the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 18. There's one more paragraph in this little section. So, talking about similar, even if he is sometimes found to be accidentally deviated from pure devotional characteristics, should still be counted amongst the pure. Unflinching faith in devotional service, in Lord Krishna, and in the spiritual master makes one highly elevated in the activities of devotional service. So the activities of devotional service and the activities in the conditioned state, they may not always go along well together. It can be a fall down from the conditioned state, but Prabhupada says here, this is what keeps one in the constitutional position. This is the qualification for the constitutional position. Unflinching faith in devotional service, in Lord Krishna, and in the spiritual master, makes one highly elevated in the activities of devotional service, which are what? Hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshipping, serving the lotus feet, making friends with, carrying out the orders, and giving everything to the Lord, as described by Prahlad Maharaj in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Nishinga Purana, it is stated, quote, if a person has completely engaged his mind, body, and activities in the service of the Supreme Lord, and externally he is found to be engaged in some abominable activities, these abominable activities will surely very quickly vanquish by the influence of his staunch devotional force. It's the old higher taste principle. The example is given that on the full moon there are some spots which may appear to be pockmarks. Still, the illumination spread by the full moon cannot be checked. Similarly, a little fault in the midst of volumes of devotional service is not at all to be counted as a fault. Attachment for Krishna is transcendental bliss. Amidst unlimited volumes of transcendental bliss, a spot or some material defect cannot act in any way. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.